Welcome to Gruesome, your horrific true crime podcast. I am Meg, and karaoke sensation Connie is about to tell us all about the Ruhr Cannibal. I first try got that
You got it. You did it.
right. As you know, we are a Zencaster powered podcast. And if you have ever wanted to start a podcast, and I know there's that little piece of you deep inside that goes, I could talk about something for a little while, you should go to Zencaster, zencastr.com/pricing and use the code gruesome with a capital G for 30% off your first 3 months and start your own podcast, please. I'm asking you as a favor to me and to you. Do that.
Do it. So earlier this month, when we had our Patreon hangout, there was a recommendation for us to do kind of a tour of Europe of cases. And that's what we're going to do. So tonight, we're going to start our first leg of the tour in Germany. And hang on, guys, because this is a brutal one. You guys were thinking Connie has not been giving us very brutal cases, and she's the one that we would think would do it. So I was like, okay, you guys asked for it.
Okay.
Trigger warnings for this case are rape, cannibalism, necrophilia, dismemberment, crimes against children, murder, strangulation, suicide. So it's literally an all-around brutal case. Yeah, Meg.
Woof, man. Okay. All right.
Meg might not like you guys after I do this case because it's been requested a couple of times. And I was like, okay.
I'm already like, oh, okay. I'm ready. I'm not going to cry. I'm going to cry.
Yeah, probably because I did. So tonight we're going to talk about the German serial killer, Joachim Kroll. He was born April 17th, 1933 in the Upper Silesia of Germany. And actually, the area he was born, Zarbja, is now part of Poland, but it wasn't at the time. He was the youngest of eight.
It's a baby I don't want to be.
Yeah, no. He had 6 sisters and 1 brother. And I think this is important. I think it's important to mention his sisters, especially due to crimes that are going to happen later on. And we're going to kind of circle back to that at the very end because I have some theories. Kroll only went to school for 5 years before he quit and he had to work on the family farm. His family was very poverty stricken as a result of World War II and its effect on Germany. Sadly, Kroll's dad was actually a prisoner. Sorry.
I just saw her little head floating in the background.
I gotta get that one. Sorry, guys. If you're a Patreon, you'll see exactly what we were just talking about. But no one else will even hear that because I'm gonna cut it out. So, like I said, sadly, Kroll's dad was actually a prisoner of war in Russia during the war. And unfortunately, he never made it home. After his dad presumably died, Kroll, his mother, and his siblings moved to a very small 2-room home. To say things were rough, it's kind of an understatement. Kroll had an IQ of about 76, which what that means is clinically it would be the diagnosis of borderline intellectual functioning. And it is a categorization. It's a category of intelligence where the person has a below average cognitive ability. So he struggled. That's another reason that he struggled in school. He was of smaller stature, especially compared to many of his peers. He had difficulty with wetting the bed growing up. Now, I'm not saying that my previous statement coincides with that. Not like he was smaller stature, so he wet the bed. I don't want anyone to think that like I'm saying that. But I was pretty curious, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. if there were pregnancy complications with his mom, because there were 8 children, and it's like, like prenatal complication risk like increase with like subsequent children. So it made me question like if his size, his intellectual ability, etc., were like if his mom had a complication, maybe he was like born early. I don't have any record of that, but obviously like medical care wasn't what it is now, and if she didn't have like prenatal treatment like she should have, or like nutrition due to like
Yeah, I think
you know
that's absolutely possible that, if there was any birth issues, especially if
yeah.
they were in a poor family, she probably didn't get the care that she needed. And, I know that women have been having babies forever, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of people that, they made it work for a long time before like modern medicine ever came into
Mhm.
play. But that doesn't mean there aren't still situations where, you just
Yeah,
do with
exactly.
what you make do.
With all of his struggles, and then you add that Kroll only had the social skills of a third grader. He was constantly ridiculed by people in town. He was called the town idiot. He was made fun of for how he wet the bed. Things were pretty rough for him growing up, which, you know what I'm going to say. We can be like, damn, that sucks for like younger him, but I have zero sympathy for adult him. He had really low self esteem. He felt incompetent around women his age. And like, as I'm saying this, like the ticker should be clicking like, okay, it's like a storm. It's like we're having the perfect storm here.
Storms brewing.
Mhm. He reportedly also physically and sexually abused animals, which we all know
Ugh.
to be part of
Telltale.
the McDonald triangle or triad for like violent tendencies is fire starting, persistent wed betting, and cruelty to animals.
You said wed bedding.
Oh, wed betting? Wed betting.
Yeah, when you said he was wetting the bed, I was like, all right, where are the other two?
Yep. Let me let me rephrase that. We all know that part of the McDonald triad for violent tendencies, the three are fire starting, persistent bedwetting past a certain age, and cruelty towards animals. Typically, someone only has to have 2 out of the 3 of these to have considerable predisposition for violent behaviors later in life. So, he's like checking the boxes, right? He lived with his mom on the family farm until he was 22. And it was believed that was majority in part of it being difficult for him to live on his own. He would later say about his life on the farm that one day he saw a pig being slaughtered and it awakened his sex drive.
Ew.
Not the Farrah Fawcett magazines, not Baywatch. It was a pig being slaughtered. In
Ew.
1955, Kroll's mom died suddenly, and like we see with a lot of murderers and serial killers, that traumatic event set off a series of horrific events. Okay, I'm going to give you guys once again another trigger warning and the opportunity for people to be like, this episode is not for me because
Which
murder.
we do not judge you if that's the case.
Yeah,
Like, dip if you got to dip,
yeah,
baby.
like no hard feelings here.
Do what you got to do.
Um, Once again, murder, rape, cannibalism, necrophilia, dismemberment, crimes against children, strangulation, suicide. And I'm not going to give a trigger warning for each victim because we have quite a few. I'm just giving you the blanket warning that those trigger warnings will apply to every case pretty much that we have.
Ooh, okay.
Ready?
Let's
No.
go.
In January of 1955, 3 weeks after his mom died, Kroll committed his first murder. He lured 19-year-old runaway Irmgard Strahl to a barn near the village of Walstead. I read in a couple of different articles that he promised her a precious gift. She was a runaway at the time. So I can't confirm that because it's just
Yeah.
like, and it doesn't
Hearsay.
matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what he was saying. He still did what he did. She was described as being very attractive and outgoing. So Kroll knew that he would never be able to pursue her in a normal romantic way due to his feelings of inadequacy for whatever reason. My guess would be the added stressor of not having his mom anymore. He lured her to the barn where he stabbed her repeatedly in the neck and then strangled her. The cuts on her stomach were consistent with how a butcher would slaughter a pig. Semen was found pretty much everywhere, so much so that police suspected that several people were involved. And this is
Ew.
and this is when I wish DNA profiling was a thing, because they would have had a
Yeah,
perfect, yeah.
that's gross.
He viciously defiled her corpse before using a long butchering knife to disembowel her. Her body wouldn't be found for 5 days.
Ugh,
Mhm.
man, that's rough.
And what was surprising to me, he kind of went on living his life like as normally as he could for a few years without
So it wasn't like it was just a barn
a
that
barn.
he
Yep.
okay, so
Yeah.
he wasn't tied to that barn in any
Nope.
way.
Nope. He was referred to as Uncle Joachim. He Yeah, like kids in the neighborhood, that's what they called him. He was never on the radar for a crime like this. After Kroll brutally murdered Irmgard, he lived a pretty quiet life, or so he says. I have feelings about that too. Like I said, his neighbors called him Uncle because he was so great with kids. He would always have candy and toys in his apartment, and the neighbor kids would come and hang out there. Neighbors thought that he was just a kind, simple man who wanted a family of his own. That's a quote. They said that he was so kind to the young girls and he treated them all as if they were his nieces. But what the neighbors didn't see, what the young children didn't see, is his house was full of dolls that he would use, like he would imitate strangling. He had inflatable sex dolls that he would have
Y-
sexual
yeah.
relations with, and he would,
Mhm.
as he was strangling these dolls.
Yikes,
Mhm.
dude.
And yeah, they didn't know how sick of a person he was. They thought he was just a nice guy with cool toys. During this time that he said that he had no desire, no urge to murder, just living his life. He had a job as a bathroom attendant, but he struggled with finances because, times were still hard. No
Yeah, I
one had
can't
any
imagine you're getting paid the big bucks as a bathroom attendant.
no one had any idea that their kids were hanging out with this psychotic monster. They had no idea that this man handing out his pocket candy was a brutal rapist. And I'm adding all of these to the reasons why my kids will never be hanging with some random man in
Okay,
his
you're not
apartment.
allowed to go to random people's apartments in general, especially when you're a child.
I think this is one of the things that we can say times are different now,
Yeah, it was the 50s, right? So,
Yeah. Yep.
okay.
Police searched everywhere for the person that could have been capable for of such a disgusting crime. They thought they had solved the case when they arrested Heinrich Ott for her murder. He was a local mechanic. He was facing such scrutiny due to the sheer brutality and nature of the crime that this innocent man took his life while he was waiting for his trial to begin.
Oh, man.
Mhm.
Why did they believe that it was him?
You're going to see this quite a bit throughout this case. I feel like if you were in the vicinity of the murder, if you were ever seen talking to the person,
Mhm.
they were just like, you did it. And that's like, that was
You're
it.
the last person connected to this person, therefore it was you.
Because this is not the only man who will take his life due to being charged or accused of crimes that Kroll committed.
Yikes.
Yeah. It is insane.
Oof. Somebody can start my yikes tally, I guess, because I think I've already said it like 5
Yeah.
times.
But like I said, no one suspected Kroll. He wasn't even on the radar. Um, he would commit his crimes. And like I said, we'll see this later on as well. He was very sporadic at the locations where he would go to. There was about 48 miles between where he lived and where she was murdered. 77 kilometers for our metric listeners, which is everyone outside of the United States. There's more of you guys than there are of us. There was another man who was also, I couldn't find his name, but he was arrested and charged with her murder as well. And he spent time in prison before he was released. On July 26, 1959, so barely a month later, he lures and murders 16-year-old Manuela Knott. She was found raped and strangled, and it would be determined that after she was murdered, he masturbated over her corpse. This guy is disgusting. Like, disgusting.
Yeah. Ugh.
And just like in, wait a second. Okay. I have to cut out a big part of this, and people are going to hear it twice because I scrolled too far and skipped a case. And I was like, this isn't
Okay.
right. I was like, wait a second. Okay. So back to why my kids will never be hanging out with some random man in his apartment. 4 years later, on June 16th, 1959, make a note of this. 4 years later, on June 16th, 1959, Kroll lured and brutally murdered 24-year-old Frida Tesmer in Rhine. The manner of her death was the exact same as Ermid. He would later recall that he remembered grabbing her by the arm, but she put up such a fight that they both rolled down the hill. And that is when he strangled her. Her body was found the next day by 5 young boys out riding their bikes.
Oh, I hate it when the kids find them. And it
Mhm.
feels like it happens so often. There's
Yeah.
always like a couple of boys riding their bicycles stumbled across the dead body. Was the movie Stand By
Stand By
Me?
Me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
She was murdered in the same way as Ermine. So she was stabbed, strangled, disemboweled. I cannot imagine being a young kid and coming upon that scene.
No, you shouldn't ever have to. No kid should have to. No person should have to come across that.
Exactly. There was one key difference in Frida's murder. When her body was discovered, there were areas of flesh missing from her buttocks and her thigh. They were meticulously removed, just like a butcher would do. Police searched everywhere for someone that could be capable of committing such a disgusting crime. They thought they had solved the case when they arrested Heinrich Ott for her murder. He was the local mechanic. He may have been seen around, like talking to her. It doesn't say really how they came in contact. But he was facing such scrutiny due to the sheer brutality and nature of the crime that unfortunately he took his life while he was waiting for his trial to begin. Once again, no one suspected Kroll. Wasn't even on their radar. There's 48 miles between the two crimes. 77 kilometers. um, there was actually another man who I couldn't find his name. He also was charged and arrested for her murder, and he spent time in prison until they were able to release him due to lack of evidence. So on July 26, 1959, barely a month later, he lures and murders 16-year-old Manuela Knott. She was found raped and strangled, and it would be determined that after she was murdered, he masturbated over her corpse.
Ugh. Was that like, did she have any parts missing or anything?
Just like in Frida's murder, she had slices of her buttocks and her thighs removed.
I hate it.
And once again, investigators believed that a group of young perverts, that was the direct quote, young perverts committed the murder because, one, due to the amount of semen that was found on the scene and
Ugh.
the sheer brutality of it.
That's gross every time you say it.
I know. I know. On February 13th, 1960, a man named Horst Otto walked into the police department and admitted to her murder. But he later recanted her statement. because he didn't do it. And it's no one knows why he admitted to her murder. But he was sentenced and served to 6 years in prison.
Just 6 years? Like, I know he didn't do it, but like, still, you're just okay.
Mhm. So,
That
but
doesn't
once again,
seem.
nobody is looking for Kroll.
Is it because they? I guess the terminology used there was simple man. Is it because he's a simple man?
It is because he does not live in these places. He just shows up, picks victims at random, and then he leaves.
Oh, okay.
And the areas are so far apart. I mean, not like different, like different, they're like hours or so apart. So they're not looking at him. It looks very random.
Yeah.
On September 3rd, 1962, 12-year-old Barbara Bruder was raped and murdered. She was on the way to the playground when she took a shortcut through the woods, and Kroll had seen her and he was there waiting for her. He was never charged in her murder because her body has never been found. And the only reason we know that he did it is because he later admitted to it. But I'm not sure if something happened afterwards where he I don't want to give away too much like at the end, so I'm going to circle back to this one. But he was very forthcoming with details later on. So this is one where I'm like, it's a little strange to me that her body was never found.
That one of however many you're about to tell me about just never came up.
Mhm.
Okay.
She's the only one where her body was never found. On April 23rd, 1962, the body of 13-year-old Petra Geis was found amongst some bushes. She was visiting a fair with a friend when she was lured away by Kroll. She had been strangled with her scarf and had been raped. That's when they discovered her body. Her red dress had been cut and her buttocks was completely removed, and as well as the left forearm and hand.
Oh.
So we're like increasing in brutality. Once again, there was a scapegoat in this case. 52-year-old convicted pedophile and sex offender Vincenz Kuhn was charged and convicted of her murder. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison and sentenced to psychiatric treatment. He was released after 6 years, which I'm not really sure why with the brutality of
Yeah, that
the
seems strange.
sentence.
Also, like, it sounds like that guy already had a record, so if they thought he murdered someone, like, why would he get out
Mhm.
sooner?
Exactly. And this is like what I was thinking when I was looking at this case. I understand the differences in locality make it different to form a pattern. I get that. But it really does seem like it's from a scene from a movie where the police just kind of look around and they're like, hey, you'll do, guilty. And then that's it.
And if these
And
are all different cities, I mean, those police departments probably weren't communicating very well.
no, and it's like the German DNA database wasn't a thing until 1998. So it's not like they could like run his DNA and be like, "Oh shit,
It's the
there's 3
same
other
one.
murders attached to this."
Yeah.
The wide use of DNA technology where they were able to store like genetic makeup to be like, oh, the perpetrator had blonde hair, like they could map the genes. That wasn't even adopted till 2017 over there, which is
Mhm.
like
Oh. Yeah, that's
mind
whew.
blown. They could use it, but they couldn't store it. So there wasn't a database for it, which is crazy.
Okay. I gotcha.
Not even 2 months later, 13-year-old Monica Taffel was abducted on her way to school. They had a massive search, and her body was discovered by a police helicopter in a forest on the outside of town. Kroll spotted her and dragged her into a rye field where his reign of terror continued. His MO remained the same, with police recalling the similarity to choosing flanks for steak. That's,
Ew.
yeah.
Gross.
The Waltham authorities realized they were the first ones to realize that they might be dealing with a cannibal. And like we see in almost all of his other cases, police point the finger at another local man. Walter Quicker, a 34-year-old convicted pedophile, was arrested due to witnesses saying that he was in the area at the time. He was released due to lack of evidence and he was cleared of all of his charges, but the persecution from neighbors, sneering from children, local shops refused to serve him. His wife ultimately left him. It was too much for Walter to take. And on October 5th, 1962, Walter went to the forest outside of town and took his life. Yeah.
Oof.
On August 22nd, 1965, Herman Schmitz and his girlfriend were having a romantic time near Lover's Lane, near a lake in Grossenbahn, Duisburg. When things started to get hot and heavy, if you get my vibe, Kroll was watching and he made up his mind that he had to have Schmitz's girlfriend, Rita. He realized that this was a unique situation for him because he would have to get through Herman to get to Rita. So he slashed the front tire of their Volkswagen. And when Herman realized like something was wrong, he gets out to check things out. And Kroll ambushes him and immediately stabs him in the chest.
Yikes.
Rita watches in horror as her boyfriend is brutally attacked. But instead of sitting around in a panic, she took control of the situation. Disregarding the fact that the tire is completely flat, she jumped into the driver's seat, throws the car into drive, and tried to run Kroll over.
Good for her.
Mm-hmm. Kroll, unfortunately, like the tiny little maggot snake that he is, was able to narrowly escape.
Ugh, what a dust mite.
Mm-hmm. 25-year-old Herman Schmitz succumbed to his wounds in the arms of his girlfriend. And a full-scale search ensued, but the mysterious attacker was never found.
Did she hit him at all? Like,
No, he must be like real fast. Like that's the vibe that I get through like the rest of this because there's another situation where he like narrowly escapes, and I'm like, are you on roller skates? Like, what the hell are you
just like
doing?
adrenaline, probably.
It's
Just
like
like,
and like it's scary to think it's like the boogeyman. It's like he's
ugh,
just you're
yeah.
running and he's just always like right out of your grip. You can't catch him. Herman is believed to be the only male victim of Kroll. And like I said, I think what is important to know that Kroll is traveling to these areas and they are all victims of opportunity. He's not local. Like he's like going to places where no one knows him. He's not some planner that is spending like weeks and months stalking his victims. He sees them, backs up and lingers for a bit, and then he attacks. After the murders, he returns home and portrays this sweet, innocent uncle vibe. And then when he has the urge to murder again, he just leaves town. This is how he's able to go unnoticed. He's committed 7 murders at this point, and no one has any idea that it's him doing it. Like, none at all. Ugh. On September 13th, 1966, 20-year-old Ursula Rolling was walking in Forsterbusch Park in Marl. She had spent the evening with her boyfriend, Adolf Schickel, at an ice cream parlor before the two went their separate ways. She walked home through the park, taking a shortcut. Kroll saw that she was walking by herself and struck up a conversation with her. After talking to her for a minute, he took his right arm and put it around her neck and drug her to nearby bushes. He strangled her until she wasn't moving. Then he proceeded to rape her and he just left her in the bushes before taking a train back to Duisburg.
Ugh. So he's like taking trains from town to town. He's not even
Yeah,
like driving.
no. He hops on a train. Sometimes he hops on a bus. And this is another instance where it makes it difficult to connect the dots because he's not always removing flesh. Like like this one, he I don't
Just when
wanna
he
say he
thinks he has enough time.
yeah, and I don't wanna say, like, "Oh, he just raped and murdered her," because it's still, like, absolutely brutal, but he didn't there was not the extras that he had been doing prior.
Yeah, and also it was they were in a park,
Yeah,
so it's
exactly,
probably
so
a
it's
pretty public area
yeah,
where anybody could walk through.
and just like in a story we've heard too many times before this, her boyfriend was questioned because he was the last person seen with Ursula, and after questioning him at length, they had to let him go because they had no evidence, but unfortunately, to the town of Marl, Adolf was guilty, and he was literally chased out of town.
Oh my gosh.
4 months after Ursula's murder, Adolf drowned himself in the Main River.
Are we up to 3 there?
Mhm. Yep.
Honestly, Kroll should be charged with their deaths as well.
I thought the
Like,
same thing. I was like, this
yeah,
is
that
gross."
seems it's entirely his fault that that is happening, and
Mhm.
ugh.
On December 22nd, 1966, so just a couple months later, Alana Harkey was abducted in Essen by Kroll. He took her on, and this is one of the only ones I've seen where he takes the victim multiple places. He took her on a city train to Wuppertal. I may not be pronouncing that right. And then he made her board a bus with him. Along the bus route, he got off near a wooded area. She was strangled, raped, and ultimately drowned in a deep ditch nearby, simply because he said that he wanted to see how someone drowned.
Ew.
She was only 5 years old.
Ugh. I kinda wondered how she was, like, getting her to go to a bus. Ugh, that's awful.
Yeah. On June 22nd, 1967, Gabrielle Putman was lured by Kroll into a field. She was forced to look at pornographic images, and I read in a few different articles and a book that she actually fainted when he showed them to her.
Oh.
He attempted to strangle her, but he started hearing tons of sirens and he thought it was the police. But what he didn't realize is the local mine was changing shift, so it was the bell. And all of the commotion was the end of the day, like miners heading home, like things shifting out. So he took off in a panic and he thought that he had killed her. He
But he didn't?
he didn't. She survived. Her parents, for whatever reason, never reported the incident to the police until Kroll was arrested.
No!
Which I don't understand. I don't know. I don't know if things were different. I can't speak to how things were in the area in Germany in that time. Like, if it would have, I don't know. I don't know. Cause like my mindset was like, what the hell? Like, how do you not be like, hey, someone literally strangled my 10-year-old daughter? 10.
Oh, yeah, like, do you think that they just didn't maybe believe her, or
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I couldn't imagine any situation where that would be like that was the case. But like I said, I don't know the culture as far as like if there was something else going on to why they felt like they couldn't.
yeah. Oh, okay, keep going. Let's hear it.
And I think that Kroll got scared after this close call with Gabrielle. Granted, he thought she died, but he was worried that someone could have seen him. So he lay low for a couple of years. He wouldn't commit another murder until July 12th, 1969. So almost 3 years. That day, he met Maria Hedgen on the banks of the Baldeny Lake. He had taken a train to Essen, then took a bus to the area where he encountered Maria. He started talking to her, and she declined the conversation, much like most people would do. And it pissed him off. So he followed her, he hit her, and he pushed her into some bushes where he strangled and then raped her. And I don't want to keep saying and then, but I think it's important to like add it to like the profile of how crazy this man is. He is not engaging in sexual assault with a live victim. Like
Yeah.
that is not happening. Maria was 61 years old. She was a Meemaw. And
Ugh.
You know how I feel about that. Once again, Kroll waited almost another year before he would attack again. On May 21st, 1970, he noticed 13-year-old Judah Ron on the train. He followed her once she got off because she was walking. She took a shortcut through the woods to go back home. He strangled and raped her before getting on the train and going home. Her neighbor, Peter Shea, was arrested and charged with her murder. He's like her age. I read in a few sources that he was called her part-time boyfriend, and all I'm saying is like she's 13, so all boyfriends are part-time at that age.
Yeah.
But he spent 15 months in prison before he was released due to lack of evidence.
He was 13 also?
It said her like it never came out and said his exact age.
You
But
think maybe he was a little older or
I think so, but like I read another one where it described him as being a teenager, so he's in that area.
in that realm?
12 lives have been taken at this point at the hands of Kroll. 3 people have lost their lives as a direct result of his actions by taking their own life. Another 4 men have spent time in prison, wrongfully charged in Kroll's murders. He's traveling, randomly murdering these young girls, and then just going home. The murders are spaced out. The manner of which the girls are being murdered is just different enough at times to make it difficult to establish the pattern. There are times where he murders every few months. There are times where he doesn't murder for years. And in fact, after he murdered Judah, he claims to not have murdered anyone for 6 years. He just laid low to everyone in town. He's just a simple man. He was, and I say this so much, but it's so mind blowing. He was never on anyone's radar for any of these murders. He only gets caught through his own actions, like incriminating himself. The police never suspected him once. Neighbors never suspected him.
I'm
On
guessing he eventually hits too close to home.
ding, ding, ding.
I was like, that's normally how this goes. But I'll let you tell the story.
On May 8th, 1976, Karen Topfer was on her way to school in Dinschlaken when Kroll abducted her. She was strangled and raped. She was only 10 years old. And again, he was never a suspect in this case. And I'm going to give you guys a heads up. I know all of these murders have been gut-wrenching and sickening, but his last murder is especially brutal. So I just wanted to give you the extra, like, hey, if you're already like, this is making me sick and I hate you for this, I would skip forward a couple minutes. So on July 2nd, 1976, Kroll would break his cardinal rule and lure a victim from his neighborhood in Duisburg. And honestly, when I first was reading about how he would hang out with all these young girls in his apartment and everyone just thought he was like the nicest man, I kept thinking like there is no way this is going to last forever because he is going to get to a point where he cannot control that urge. The temptation is going to be too much. For the previous 21 years, he had been going from town to town, either by bus or by train, sometimes both, finding victims at random. But on that July day, Kroll lured 4-year-old Marion Ketter into his apartment. The deviation from his normal method is he dismembered Marion for 2 reasons. 1 was to completely cannibalize her, and 2 was he wanted to be able to dispose of her body the best he could because it was at his apartment. A little later, like a couple days later, a neighbor asked Kroll if he knew why the upstairs toilet was backing up. The apartments had shared bathrooms. Kroll looked at his neighbor without missing a beat or acting like it was a big deal and just said, "Guts."
Ew.
The neighbor laughed because he thought he meant, like, you go to the bathroom and, like, it all comes out. But so the neighbor went up there to try and, like, see what was going on. He realized, like, Kroll was being quite literal. When he looked in the toilet, he saw what he believed to be intestines.
Ew,
He immediately
yikes.
contacted the police. He thought it was an animal. Police wasted no time going to Kroll's apartment when they confirmed the neighbor's suspicions. Only the police were like, these are not animal innards. This is these are human. Once inside, they immediately found Marion Ketter's dismembered body. They found parts of her body in the refrigerator, in the freezer. He proudly showed them the stew he was making on the
Oh,
stove.
no. Nope, nope, nope,
Mhm.
nope.
Yeah, he was just like, "Hey, look." Police moved that toilet, and they were able to find some of her organs, like, underneath, like how a toilet
In
goes
the
down.
pipe, yeah.
Yeah. He was arrested without any fight. When he got to the police station, he admitted to all 13 of his other murders. He confessed to everything. He confessing to engaging in cannibalism. Police were further disgusted when they were like, "Hey, why the hell are you cannibalizing women, you sick asshole?" And he just replied, "Meat is expensive."
Ew.
There was no overwhelming desire. It wasn't like he felt the need to do it. It wasn't some ritual thing. It was because he wanted to save money on his groceries. He further explained to authorities that the reason he would engage in necrophilia is because he didn't want to have to worry about a woman being able to tell him how much she didn't like it. It's why he would engage in sexual activity with all the dolls around his house. So the neighborhood, needless to say, was completely shocked. Parents couldn't get over what kind of monster was living literally right under their noses. He's the worst of the worst. Of the worst. Probably the worst serial killer that have I mean, we know the big names, right? Dahmer,
Yeah.
Bundy, Toy Box Killer, but I hadn't heard of him. Like,
No, I
until
hadn't
he was
either.
like, recommended, like, I hadn't heard of him. While Kroll was in prison, he eagerly gave details to authorities. He went to different locations with them. He demonstrated what he did to his victims. There are legit pictures of him acting out his crimes. But it wasn't for clout and it wasn't for bragging. He genuinely thought that if he cooperated with police, he would be given a surgery that would stop his urges to rape and murder. I'm assuming he meant castration because some sex offenders in Germany at the time were surgically castrated. Actually, they were until up until like 2012. Um,
Dang.
yeah,
Honestly, I'm for that.
I agree. They still offer chemical castration for sex offenders under like certain psychiatric conditions, but it's a voluntary procedure at this
What
point.
is like, I know what castration is. How is it done chemically?
They inject something that I think it either eliminates or it decreases where you don't produce the hormones to become aroused.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yep, for that too. Sure.
And that could be wrong. So if you're listening and you're like, that's not what chemical castration is, like, please let me know how bad I suck at that. So,
Enlighten us.
um, he thought that he would have this surgery and then I shit you not, like, was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do say all this, and then I'm gonna be released back into society as a reformed citizen, and I won't have the urge to rape and murder anymore." So
No, friend.
imagine his surprise when that was not the case. He was in prison for almost 3 years before his trial began, and due to the sheer number of victims and the brutality, it lasted 151 days. He was ultimately convicted of 9 murders. He wasn't convicted of the other 5 because of the time since the murder and, like, time since the murder had occurred and the lack of evidence and
It's
other
also had
ones.
been like 25 years at that
Mhm,
point.
exactly. He was sentenced to 9 life sentences. He was
Good.
never gonna see the light of day, and honestly, I don't feel like that was enough. I was trying to think of, like, the most brutal thing that should have happened, like firing squad, acid bath, having the exact same thing happen to him, like all of his victims, standing in a room of women as they told him how big of a piece of shit he was.
Yeah.
I don't know, but he died in 1991 of a heart attack, so there's a plus. He only spent 9 years in prison.
That's
And it
so gross because for like his whole life, he was pretty much
Mhm.
free and doing exactly what he wanted to do.
So I'm gonna go over a couple theories that I have. I do not believe with any bone in my body that when he's like, "Oh, I didn't murder anyone for 6 years. I don't believe that one bit. I don't think
But if
there's
he was so forthcoming, why wouldn't he say it? Do you think he like blacked it out or just
No, I think he knew if he crossed a because he like I said, he really thought he was gonna just get the surgery and be released. I think if he said too much, they would be like, "Hell no."
do you think he had that cognitive ability to like stop himself there? Like stop
I
himself from saying some but like some but not all?
I don't know, cause like, one of the articles I read, an investigator was talking, like, if you did not know that he was mentally handicapped, you would have thought he was a mad genius with how he carried everything out. Like, he knew to go to different cities. Like, he
Yeah.
knew, like
He knew how to not get caught.
yeah. And my second thing I wanna discuss is he was ridiculed by everyone due to his size, his mental capacity, his bedwetting, and I would be hard pressed to believe that his sisters were not part of that. Like, his sisters didn't contribute to him thinking that
Like bullying him.
yes,
Well,
did
he's yeah, the youngest one.
youngest, he's the smallest, he has all
He's a boy, yeah.
yeah, and I would part of me thinks that the added stress of his like, the only woman who cared for him suddenly dies. The other women in his life have ridiculed him.
How old did you say he was when this started?
He was, let me see, was he was 21, maybe 24, because he was born in 1933 and his first murder was in 1955. So 23, right?
33, 43. He'll be 20.
22. So he was 22.
Wait, if he's born in 1933?
Yeah,
43, yeah, okay, yeah.
22. So I am wondering if like his sisters and how he was treated by them, and I'm not saying it's their fault at all. I don't want anyone to think that. But if he had so much animosity, if like that's why, because strangling is a personal thing. Like
It's rage.
that is rage. Like you don't see that like because there were only a couple cases where there was something used to strangle his victims. He was manually strangling these women and
Yeah, but
girls
he
and
also
kids.
sounded like based on, that triad,
Mhm.
he had a predisposition
Oh,
to violent behavior, so if
absolutely.
anything, it just,
It's like stoking the
added
fire.
fuel to the fire. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but
Ugh.
yeah, sorry. I know that this one was brutal, but like I said, it had been requested a couple times, and I mentally committed to it before I realized, like, holy shit.
um, so the other when after he got arrested did the 10-year-old's parents come forward? Did he get anything from like for
No,
that or did she
no.
testify, do you know?
I don't know if she testified, and if she would have, it probably wouldn't have been in the. I was able to find like reports and stuff, but I I wasn't able to like get full court documents like we can here.
Yeah.
I couldn't find those.
Also, because it was, also pretty long time ago. I mean, Guess not that
Not
long.
really. You think
Yeah.
about it, not really,
Well,
because
you
he
say like
died in
1933. I'm like, whoo, that was a long time ago. But he went on till the 70s, which
yeah,
is
the f
50s to the 70s.
Mhm.
Woof, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, all the way through, 1976.
Ugh,
So
I think you
so
should
he was
probably tell me a Zencaster ad before you keep telling me stuff.
well, if you are thinking, "I never wanna listen to anything like that again," or, "I could tell that story better," you should. And if you're thinking 50 minutes of true crime is too much, I wanna talk to people for 20 minutes, you should start a podcast, and you should use Zencaster to do it. You They're gonna be like I said, they're gonna be releasing their mobile stuff soon where you can record from your phone. You don't need fancy mic. You don't need anything except for a cell phone because it does so much awesome post production afterwards. If you could hear, actually, you can hear. Please go back to episodes like 1 through 5 and then listen to us now. And you're like, yeah, that's all you need, the sound quality, the ease. If we can do it, I can't operate anything. I mean, I used to code MySpace code in when we were 16, and now I can barely figure out how to work my TV, but I can work Zencaster. So if this sounds like something for you, go to zencaster.com/pricing. Use promo code gruesome with a capital G. Get 30% off your first 3 months. And I know you guys are using this code, so I need you to start sending me your podcast that you're starting.
Yeah, we see you using it. We can see it. So do it and then send us your podcast
Yeah.
before we start, I don't know, emailing you.
Yeah.
We're going to start stalking you.
We're going to be like, hey, I noticed that you used our promo code. What's your podcast about?
Yeah, and then you're going to have to do an episode about us getting arrested for stalking you. That's what's going to
Yeah.
happen.
We'll give you hey, and you'll be able to interview us from jail with Zencaster. Full circle.
Oh, okay. Now you can continue now that I've had like a okay.
I know. This one was so brutal, and I have hit my child case quota for the quarter. Don't request one because I'm not going to do it because this one fucked me up. I've been saving it for that. This one fucked me up.
Oof. I just
And I I mean, as brutal as that was, that's the PG-13 version. There's some stuff where I was like, I'm not going to talk about that.
oof, I guess I'm glad.
Yeah.
I just can't the age ranges, like the MO stayed the same, but the like
But it did and it didn't because there were times like I mean he had a drowning victim, he had a male victim, he would not always like remove parts of the body. The areas that it's just so it was so sporadic. It was just sporadic enough to not be able to put the points together.
yeah, and especially with like lack of communication, no DNA databases, any of
Yeah,
that
like
kind of
in
junk.
2022, someone would have made a TikTok about that and his ass would have been found like quick.
Pronto.
It's just
Honestly,
crazy.
probably after the first one. And like you said,
Mhm.
it got more brutal, but that first one sounded like the most brutal. Like how you said,
Well, most of his victims were disemboweled.
oh, they were. Okay.
Yeah. And he, when I was reading some of like the interviews and like them talking about like what he did, he almost thought that him not sexually assaulting them as like while they were alive was better. And I was like, it's the same thing.
It's worse,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know it's all bad. It's all terrible.
Like
Like, you can't justify good or bad in this. It's all evil.
yeah, you are the worst of the worst. You are the
Just vile.
vile. Yeah.
Vile. Blah.
And you know what's crazy? I think about this sometimes, right? I think about like Ted Bundy. And I think about how, like, when most people think of serial killers, they're like, man, Ted Bundy was the freaking worst. And then you hear this. Or
Yeah.
if you fall into the rabbit hole of the toy box killer, you're like, "Ugh." Like
Yeah,
there's
that one's
too much. Like there's there's the level of evil that has existed on this planet. Ah,
is
it's too much
it's
sometimes.
horrific. Um, I don't think of Ted Bundy as the worst. I do think of him as the most annoying. Like
Mhm.
that's why I hate him the most. Is I'm like, that guy is annoying to me. I hate his face. He annoys me that like he got by with so much for so long.
Every
He
time somebody talks about him being attractive, like, one,
so annoying to me.
Zac Efron is not Ted Bundy. They are different people. You can't be like, "Oh my god, look at Zac Efron, like, Ted Bundy is so hot." No, you're wrong. Ted Bundy was a little bitch, and he could just talk his way, like, he was charismatic, and sometimes I think that having that level of charisma where you could fool people like that is worse than being, like,
That's not
big
even
and
charisma, that's manipulation.
yeah, that's
Like,
true.
you're manipulative, if
Mhm.
anything. And it's easier to be manipulative if you're not, like, also, I don't know, scary, but ugh, like I said, I don't
Do you
think he's the
ever
worst, he definitely annoys the shit out of me, though.
do you ever stop and think, if some of these serial killers, if it was now, like, would they be able to manipulate women like they did, like Ted Bundy?
Hell no. I do not think so.
And I think, like, I'm taking, like, take DNA out of it, like, DNA completely out of it. The way that I mean, I know we still have a long way to go as far as, like, how people perceive women as far as, like, the hierarchy of things, but, I just think that someone would be, like, texting their friend at another police department, like, "Oh my god, like, this is what's happening," and they're like, "Holy shit, that just happened here too," and they'd be like, "Oh my god, we have a serial killer." Like, "What are we doing?"
Yeah, or even, like, there are citywide like groups for
Mhm.
women and men on like dating apps. And anytime you do something creepy or weird or like uncomfortable, they post that creepy, weird thing that you do. So everyone
Mhm.
else sees it and they're like, avoid this human being. And so I think very quickly it would be realized, like, also the
Mhm.
digital trail in general.
Yeah, it's
Like, if you have an Apple Watch, you're done for
yeah, you're done.
you're done.
If you're this is the thing that you can also, like, think about is, like, it's crazy to think you can be walking down the street, stalking someone, and someone's making a TikTok video across the street and just happens to get you in it.
You were there. That's
You were
proven.
there. You were there. Uh, it's mm,
Chaos. The world is
chaos.
chaos. It's chaos out there.
That's why, like, sometimes I'll think about the Delphi murders, and I'll think, like, how technology has played a huge role in that altogether, like, the investigation.
That's
But,
gonna bust open one day, and
I
I
have a
am here for it.
my thoughts on it are the next 3 years, I think it's gonna
Yeah, I agree.
justice will be served, and I hope it's a little bit of that Indiana justice, that backwoods justice.
We love a Midwest justice story. We want a Midwest Batman. Now that I'm thinking, I know every time we start saying justice, I go straight to Batman, but like, I want to see what Midwest Batman looks
He's
like.
got a mullet and a Coors Light, and he is just the hero we didn't know we needed.
He's got just like a Motley Crue shirt, like cut off, and like football pads.
Do you know my favorite thing about the Midwest? My favorite I have, like, there are times where I'm like, "Damn, the Midwest." Like, You've all seen the TikTok. It's mid. Like, we don't have anything that's like, hey, but if you're at a gas station in the middle of the night and someone else hears some man being creepy to you, they're going to be like, "Excuse me, ma'am, we got a problem here." And they will throw down in that Pack-a-Sack parking lot for you.
That Pack-a-Sack parking lot. That's so funny.
That's the
I've
type of men we need. Like, if you're a guy and you're listening to this, be that guy. Be the one who's watching out for other women, not in a creepy way, but like just watching out for them. And then if you see someone, yeah, I don't know, getting loud with them, being weird, step up.
just yeah, yes, you should. But
Tell
also,
you.
like, it's horseshit that, they wouldn't listen to the woman, but they would listen to another dude potentially stepping in.
But also, I'm going to play the both sides card here. If you're a girl and you see some girl getting crazy with a guy, like not in a
Yeah, you should just be
self-defense
like,
way, like
hey, drink
simmer
a
down,
Snapple.
simmer down.
I don't know why Snapples would help you calm down, but I really like them.
I think you meant Snickers.
Eat a Snickers, drink a Snapple.
We got a
Go into
problem here.
Pack-a-Sack and get some gas station food.
Go right in there. They have those tornadoes.
Tornadoes.
Look, don't hate on the tornado because until I had my gluten issues, I would mess up a tornado. That was like the one.
I can't even speak poorly of a tornado because I will eat a gas station hot dog any day of the
Yeah.
week.
When I was pregnant with my daughter, I craved gas station smoked sausage.
Gas station fare.
Like not the bun, nothing. Just the hot dog. I would send my husband up to because we had a gas station like kind of by our house. I would send him up there to get me like 4 of them, no buns, toss that shit in the bag and bring it home. And I would just
Like I'm disgusted and impressed at the same time. Just bring me 4 gas station smoked sausages. This baby's hungry.
I used to get like I had heartburn with her so bad.
Yeah,
And
I wonder why.
oh my god, she's gonna have so much hair. One, she was bald. She's almost 4 and we just
She was
got hair.
bald. It was just the gas station tornadoes.
And that's what Zach would say. It's like she has heartburn, but not because of the baby. It's because she keeps eating these smoked sausages from the gas. And then it becomes like a thing. Like he would like ridicule me about it because it is kind of gross. But I would do it like a drug dealer. Like I would go. I was an addict.
You have to be sneaky about it after a certain point.
I would go to a gas station, not around our house. I'd get like 3 tornadoes, pepper jack, and cheese, and just sitting there and chomp, chomp, chomp.
You're like sitting at the table with like the old ladies doing scratchers. You're like, don't tell my husband about it.
I'm snoring the pepper jack through my nose, just trying to get one last hit. And then I'd go home and he's like, you smell like a bratwurst.
You're like, yeah, had to get my fix.
He told me once because I was all about getting this new purse. I'm like crying about this. I was like, I really just want this big expensive purse. And he said, I'm not spending $1,000 for you to shove tornado and Starbucks to tornado wrappers and Starbucks receipts in it. If you open my purse at the very bottom of a field of tornado wrappers and receipts, there would be my wallet, and that's all I had in there.
I can't even carry a purse anymore because it just becomes all of your garbage. You're like, oh, I just keep my wallet and this is my walking trash can.
I'm crying and thinking about how classy I try to be, and then I'm like shoving gas station fare.
Like, you gotta have a little bit of both. It's all right. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
The hospital I work at, we have a gas station because it's like on a base. We have a gas station essentially. They call it a shopette in the basement. So
That
there's
sounds
some
horrifying, but go on.
that's where our cafeteria is too. So like we go to the basement and it's like a gas station. And sometimes it's like I'm about to risk it all for this pepper jack tornado.
About to risk it all.
I tried buying because you can buy them by the case there, and I was like, I'm gonna buy one. But then I realized I don't have that roller thing. I don't think I can give it the
Yeah,
same
no, it's not
grip.
as good. It's gotta be on, like, the steamroller. Yeah. I like also, like, when you walk into a gas station, that smell of just all the things, like,
Mhm.
I like that smell. Not necessarily the gasoline, but just the smell of the gas station when you walk into it.
It
I don't know,
stresses me out
it's
a
kind of a
little bit.
comforting smell for me. I don't know why.
It's like sensory overload of all of my favorite things. When I die and go to heaven, it's gonna like I'm gonna walk through and it's just gonna be like hanging
It's gonna
smoke
smell like a gas
sausages.
station.
And I can just walk through like, "Nah, nah, nah, nah."
Heaven is a 7-Eleven. That's a new country song. You guys can't take it because I'm gonna write it. I gotta get a shirt that says heaven is a 7-Eleven now. I'm gonna go wake my husband up and be like, "Hey, I need you to write a song. Get
Or
your
like
guitar. We gotta go. We gotta go to the studio."
or you know how the Wawas just like
Yeah.
Wawa want.
Oh,
We
that's
it the never ending like me reading our reviews. We got a
oh,
review called
I saw this yesterday and I laughed.
and it was like, "Talk, talk, talk. No one cares about your birthday." And I was like, "That is a broad statement. A lot of people care about my birthday," which is
You
why
know, that one made me laugh because they were like, "Get to what you're I don't know why podcasters think that people wanna hear about their
what they
lives." And I was like,
who's gonna tell them?
they said, "Why don't you get what you're supposed to do, and then get to it afterwards?" And I was like, "That's what we do!
I mean,
What are you talking about?"
sometimes we give you like 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes of talk in the middle, and we do get on tangents, and I tell you I digress. Like,
What
what
else do
from
you
me?
want? That one I did roll my eyes at pretty hard. You can tell they probably listened to that one episode. Just
Mhm.
just your birthday episode.
And I think it's kind of rude because I happen to celebrate it's still my birthday month. I'm still celebrating it. I'm still buying
Technically,
things.
yeah, you still got like a solid week.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think it's 29 days in February, right?
28. It's not a leap year this year, is it?
Oh yeah, that's right. 28. Okay. I can never remember if it's 29 every year and
Me
then
either.
28 is the leap year or if
I
it's
just
28
looked
and
it
29 is.
I looked it up only because I was trying to figure out how many days we have until we go to Los Angeles. And I was like, "Is that extra leap day in there? How does this work? Is it a less day?
Is it less day or is it more day?
I don't know."
uh Heaven is a 7-Eleven. I'm gonna think
I
about that
love
all
that.
day tomorrow.
I do want a shirt that says that.
Oh goodness. I think we could probably end on that one.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.